To order, and the invocation this morning will be given by Pastor Ray Smith, and if you'll remain seated, and then after that, Commissioner Fletcher will lead us in the pledge, and you should stand for that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Honorable Commission, fellow citizens. I always like to start by going back into the Book of Books. There's nothing in here that isn't germane to today. For instance, it says, discretion will protect you and understanding will guard you. Next thing that I see here is, do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back later, I'll give it tomorrow, when you now have it with you. Preserve sound judgment, discernment. Don't let them out of your sight. Here's another good one. It's not good to punish an innocent man or to flog officials for their integrity. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. And how about this one? Make plans by seeking advice. The old-timers knew what they were talking about. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. And then we get down to the meat. It says we have different gifts according to the grace given us. If it is serving, let him serve. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. And if it is leadership, let him govern diligently. Showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. He who rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment upon themselves. It is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also because of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give everyone what you owe him. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If it's revenue, then revenue. If it's respect, then respect. And if it's honor, then honor. We thank you, Father God, for your inspired word. We come to you this morning asking that you instill within these officials who are dedicated to the county a desire to do what is right in the best interest of the majority of the people, not bowing to special interests or to their personal opinions. They sought their positions and were selected by their peers to assume the awesome task of leadership. They're charged with the responsibility of overseeing programs instituted for your health, safety, and welfare. And we ask you, Heavenly Father, to provide them with wisdom and courage in their deliberations. Let them not succumb, Father God, to the temptations of doing what is politically correct, but rather, dear Lord, where our community is weak, give it strength. Where it is divided, unite it. Where it may be corrupt, reform it. And where it is wrong, correct it. Where it is complacent, provoke it into positive action. And where it is right, confirm and endorse it. Father God, those who exercise their authority over us, let them give forth their best effort for those they represent and for all those whom they govern. And this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Please join with me in pledging to our great nation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Under additions and deletions, we've been requested by staff to pull 11A.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like, if at all possible, we had the issue as far as the advertising for the public hearing to designate Old Dixie Highway as a historical road, and that has been delayed for about 3 weeks now. If we could move that up, I see Mr. Tanner's back there, I see Mr. Maid back there. That's about not everybody on both sides of the issues, but that's at least one on each. And I don't think we'd be putting anybody out if we went ahead and took care of that since it was postponed from the last meeting.
Where would you like that to be moved?
If we could do that right after the consent agenda?
Okay.
Second that.
What number is that item, Wesley?
11A, page 270 through 292.
11A2, okay.
Isn't that right, Paul?
Okay, so you want to move that after the consent?
Just out of consideration for the individuals that have been involved in that, please,
So we'll move that up to,
after the consent agenda.
okay.
Move agenda as amended.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next is a proclamation, and it'll be presented by Commissioner Fleischer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I see Captain Andy Bradley. Come on up. And, Jeff Luther, come on up from the Sheriff's Office.
Good morning.
And Mr. Mattson. I have the distinct privilege and honor of reading this proclamation designating Wednesday, October 10th, 2007, as Put on the Brakes on Fatalities Day. Whereas traffic crashes in the United States of America took 512,621 lives in the last 12 years, January 1st, 1995 through December 31st, 2006, including 42,642 lives in 2006. Here in Florida, crashes claimed 36,522 souls in the last 12 years, including 3,374 souls in 2006. And whereas traffic crashes in Indian River County claimed 27 souls in 2006, 32 souls in 2005, and 41 souls in 2004, 42 souls in 2003, traffic, and 28 souls in 2002. And whereas traffic crashes are the leading cause of death for people ages 6 through 33, and over half of the passenger vehicle occupants killed died unbuckled. And motorcycle rider fatalities now account for 11% of total fatalities, and 4,784 pedestrians and 773 bicyclists were killed in 2006 traffic crashes. And whereas an estimated 2.54 million people were injured in traffic crashes in 2006, and these roadway deaths and injuries in the United States cost society $230.6 billion per year. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that October 10, 2007 be designated as Put the Brakes on Fatalities Day in Indian River County, and urge all citizens to review and renew their commitment to traffic safety and to help the lives by driving as if your life depends on it, and promoting safety and safe driving, perhaps in the best interest in the behaviors of the sharing these important messages throughout our community. Adopted this 9th day of October 2007, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Captain?
Thank you. The Sheriff's Office thanks the Commission. All law enforcement appreciate your support for this important topic.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mattson.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Sheriff's Office as well, and they've spearheaded something called the Community Traffic Safety Team here in the county. We meet regularly with engineers, enforcement officials, emergency response personnel, and have been able to get sidewalk safety grants, which will be important to children on a drop-off basis at schools. And I do want to thank them and owe a lot to this proclamation to the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you.
Thanks, Captain. Good to see you.
Or say anything.
Next is the consent agenda.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Under, next item will be 11A2, Old Dixie. Consideration public hearing date regarding Harry Tanner's petition to designate 1.3 mile segment of Old Dixie Highway south of 512 as a historical road, and that's found on pages 270 through 296.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bear with me just a moment. My name is, for the record, is Roland DeBlois, Chief of Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement with the county. What we have before you today is the setting of a public hearing date to consider a petition that has been submitted by Mr. Harry Tanner to designate a segment of Old Dixie Highway officially as an historic road. The segment we're referring to is approximately 1.3 miles long. It's just south of County Road 512 at the north end of the segment, extending down to just north of Schumann Drive. And there among the segment is a railroad crossing, so essentially the northern portion roughly is west of the railroad tracks, with the southern portion east of the tracks. This is kind of a blow-up of the southern segment. Again, it shows the alignment and the railroad crossing. The very southernmost portion of this segment, which is large for the most part a one-lane road, is within the city limits, but then it becomes within the unincorporated county. Just a blow-up of the northern part of the segment. And as you can see on the overhead, it does show the city limits. So the northern portions within the city, as you get closer to 512, although it still remains a narrow road, it does become a two-lane road once you get up into the city limits. Here's a few pictures of the road. In the unincorporated county, the zoning designation of properties adjacent to the road range from industrial to residential. There also are a number of parcels, land ownerships that have sole access along this road, particularly on the west side of the Old Dixie segment. A good portion of the parcels on the east side of this segment also have frontage on US 1, so access, and they're also on the other side of the railroad track. So on the east side, most of the segments have US 1 frontage, so access is not so much an issue, but particularly the west side, there are some access, sole accesses on the segment. Under the county code, chapter 933 is the county's ordinance related to historic and archaeological site protection. Within that chapter, there's a specific section that says when the county does receive a petition for a historic designation, the Board of County Commissioners shall hold a public hearing to consider the petition. So in that respect, from staff's reading of this, is when someone files a petition, there's a procedural obligation for the commission to hold a public hearing on the matter. The other part of it is it also indicates pretty specifically that property owners are to be given written notification of the hearing before it occurs, at least 30 days before the hearing. That written notification hasn't occurred yet in this case because we're here to set the date. So we'll have that date. And in this case, there's the affected property owners from staff's perspective, and under the code would be all the adjacent landowners in particular that would get the direct written notice. Also, I want to point out that we have five roads in the county right now that are formally designated as historic roads. For example, Jungle Trail, and there's also others. They're designated as such in the county's comprehensive plan. And therefore, if this formal designation is to proceed, it will require an amendment to the county comprehensive plan. And under those procedures, there's a series of public hearings associated with that process. So if we do go down the path of this designation, the hearing process will merge with the comp plan amendment process. As far as the process goes, the petition has been submitted. It's been submitted to the Historic Resource Advisory Committee, which has reviewed the petition. They considered it at a couple of meetings and had made some recommendations to move forward with the hearings. The next would be for this commission to schedule a public hearing, and then the next step after that would be if the board at that first public hearing decides to proceed with the process of the formal designation. The next step would be to merge it with the comprehensive plan amendment hearings and to move forward with that process. Staff's recommendation is that the board accept November 13th as the hearing date. That would, even though this was postponed from last meeting, that still gives us time to do the 30-day written notice to the landowners. I do want to point out that one of the landowners' attorney has a conflict on that date, and he might bring it up so we can talk about that. And finally, if that is the date, or whatever date the commission selects, we would send a 30-day notice to the landowner so they would be fully advised of that opportunity to attend. And that's our recommendation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I did receive a call after last week's meeting when this matter was postponed from Mr. Mabe's attorney, Jeff Smith. He indicated that he had a trial date starting November 13th and would be unable to attend and requested that it be held on the November 20th instead. I do have some concern because early on in this process he raised an objection to the Historic Resource Advisory Committee hearing the matter without notice to the property owners, and I assured him that the way our regulatory scheme is set up, the advisory committee makes the recommendation, but it's the board's role to determine whether to designate Old Dixie as historic road or not at public hearing. And I'd hate to be in the position where he had objected to the lack of input earlier, and we know that he's unavailable for a particular date, November 13th, and frustrate his ability to participate. So I'd recommend that you schedule it for the 20th of November.
Okay.
And we do have the petitioner here, as well as the as other folks who may want to speak.
Okay.
Morning. First, I'm Harry Tanner, 517 Belfast Terrace, Sebastian, Florida. First, I'd like to mention that I would very much appreciate it if this is going to be put on for a public hearing, and I'd like to be able to speak at it, even from the public point, just as a public person, but if you could make it in early December, because my grandson's down now, and he's going home, and his birthday is November 15th, and I'm going to New York. I know 2 weeks before and after are difficult for me. So I would like that. Now, please let me go just a few minutes. Mr. Chairman, I petitioned the Indian River County Historical Resources Advisory Committee for the request before you today. 1, please, the way today's agenda is worded worries me. I have no lawful right to ask the Board of County Commissioners to consider an historic petition from me. The petition in question today was addressed by me to the Historic Resources Advisory Committee, not to the Board of County Commissioners. What we should be considering for a public hearing is the Historic Resources Advisory Committee's recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners designate this section of historic roadway based on the Historic Resource Advisory Committee recommendation voted unanimously on April 12, 2007. Now, the staff put up that sign there where it sort of indicated that the Historic Advisory Committee, that's a committee appointed by you folks to advise you. And on April 12th, they voted unanimously, 5-0, to recommend to this commission that you designate this historic roadway historic and that you protect it. You didn't see that up there, and I don't know why. But you did see up there a point about the word shall being in our laws. In other words, you shall have this public hearing. I didn't want to go into all of this, but I see it's a difficult thing for me, and I need to get all of this stuff done. So I just want to read you our law, Section 902-04. This is the role of the Board of County Commissioners in planning and development. Number 12, the Board of County Commissioners shall, there's that word again, shall designate historic resources as such and apply and enforce the rules and regulations of Chapter 933, Historic and Archaeological Resource Protection, and other relative land development regulations of Indian River County, and as applicable, the state of Florida, concerning historical resources within the county. Commissioners, I hope you can get your arms around the idea that historical resources are resources. It doesn't seem to be happening anywhere else. So I'm hoping that for the matter of how this is on the agenda, Mr. Commissioner, that you will ask the county attorney to review that and make sure that I'm not the designate. It's not me. It says in the law that my petition will accompany it. But the Historical Resources Advisory Committee voted 5-0 for you to designate this, and you're not hearing that from staff. So please ask our attorney for this, how the public notice should be worded. Second, I'm here today especially to ask that you make sure the process during the public hearing is according to our county law 933-06 sub 2. Again, you saw that up there on the board, but like the other law, there were 3 dots and it stopped. It didn't tell you what the rest of the law said. This section calls for the public hearing to be pursuant to the historical criteria listed in 933-10. It says that in 933-06. 933-10 contains a list of items that should be considered for a historical designation to be conferred. I believe by law it is only this list of items that can be discussed at the public hearing. I believe issues or items not listed in 933-10 are prohibited subjects during this particular hearing. It's a special hearing.
Mr. Tanner, if I could, can I ask? I'd like to ask a question. Is there any commissioner here that objects to setting a public hearing?
No.
I need to finish this.
No.
I need to finish this because these are legal questions, and I'm really disturbed that something's wrong here. And I have one more page.
Okay.
One more thing. So, my belief, I please ask our county attorney to look into this before the hearing, and if possible, provide for some instruction at the hearing as to what's allowed in. And the last, I don't think there should be a special notification to property owners for a historic roadway designation. This section of law quoted in the backup material, again, it was up there were 3 dots missing. It missed the point. It's archaeological designation. That's what it says. This section of law is calling for notification to property owners is only about an archaeological designation. Mine is a historic designation for a roadway, not an archaeological. Obviously, if you're doing an archaeological designation on somebody's property, you got to let them know. This is a roadway. It's not a 30-day notice. My last statement. Doing a notification would make those notified think that their input, and we know this to be the case, is more important than other citizens. I don't think that is the case. A special notification is not called for in the law that governs this historic designation public hearing. This is about our history, and all citizens have an equal voice. I believe the law suggests no special notice should be made in this case. Please ask our attorney about this before sending out any special notice. Thank you. I'm Harry Tanner. That's all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Tanner. Comments?
The section that Mr. Tanner spoke of does talk about a request for archaeological designation. Upon that, the county provides written notice to property owners of the intent to consider a proposed historic designation at least 30 days prior to the date of the hearing. So the paragraph itself speaks both to archaeological and historical. I think the intent is if you're going to give some sort of formal designation that people be notified that would be affected by it. I think the fact that the word archaeological is in one place and historic in the other, they both speak to designations and notice. And it just, common sense and courtesy to me says if somebody's property will be affected, you let them know and have an opportunity to be heard about it.
Well, I think anytime there's a public hearing, that the more people aware of it, the better. You get more input.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Excuse me. I noticed that the applicant would like to have it in December. I do not object to that. If that's the problem, we need to...
The only thing that I would request, I agree with you, Commissioner Bowden, the only thing I'd request is make sure that we have, since we have another attorney that is obviously wanting to be here for it, let's try to coordinate the calendars as best possible. We're not going to make it so that everybody can show up. But if on Mr. Tanner's behalf, we've moved it, and I was willing to move it for Mr. Smith, is it? The attorney? So as long as it's within reason and we can accommodate, that's what I think our job is.
Maybe staff could come back with a date that try to gel it together.
Well, that's probably a good idea. If the motion was made, just let staff set the date and put it on the agenda. I don't know that they need to come back if...
What we normally do for public hearings a week or two before is announce that this is the date on the agenda. If that's okay, we would just move forward.
Well, if you could coordinate and make sure everybody, all interested parties, can make the same day if at all possible, wherever we have to make the date. Okay? So can we get a motion?
Yeah, just one other quick question. Mr. Collins, do you see it as a legal issue based on the fact that Mr. Tanner is saying that this should be a Historical Resources Advisory Council recommendation or his petition?
Well, I think his point is he started the ball rolling with a petition, but it's the committee's recommendation that's going forward. And I think to have his name on it rather than consider the recommendation of the Historic Resource Committee is probably a good point. He started the ball, the committee is bringing it forward. So when this comes back, it could be public hearing to consider the Historic Resource Committee recommendation to designate a portion of Old Dixie as a historic road.
Okay.
Just for the record, the staff report for this item, the written report, does spell out the committee's recommendations thus far, and they will certainly be part of the presentation at the hearing.
Okay. Ms. Stanbridge?
Yes, I'm Ruth Stanbridge. I'm the county historian. And my question is, at this public hearing, it will be talking about the history of the road, not land uses or such, but just the history. If people have opinions that the road is not historical, I think that would be the time for them to bring it out. Otherwise, it would be simply history. Is that correct?
Well, that's the point I think that Mr. Tanner was trying to make, that there are minimum criteria that you must find to designate it a historic road. But I think the fact that you must find certain minimum criteria for historic designation doesn't preclude other factors from consideration in the decision.
And part of the Historic Resource Advisory Committee's recommendation was for a management plan. And I'm sure you're all aware we went through many years of providing a management plan for Jungle Trail so that we could address the land uses along that road. And so I would hope that this public hearing would be the primary subject would be the historical aspects of that road, and then of course when you get to a management plan you will consider the land uses along the road and how it may change or not change throughout the coming years.
My experience has been with the public hearings that they go every place. Everywhere. But I just needed a direction that we could at least stay on the subject. Maybe not, but we can try.
We can try. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? As long as we're open here. Okay. Can we get a motion?
Do we have one?
I don't think we did. Did we?
Okay, so moved that we set the public hearing in December.
That's per staff.
Per staff recommendation.
Yeah. Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. And under public items, public hearings, consideration of proposed amendments to Chapter 911 and 915 of the Land Development Regulations to implement comprehensive plan changes to FLUE Policy 5.8 Agricultural PDs, and that's found on pages 138 through 189. Dan? Mike's not on.
Stan, yes, Mike's on.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Still Stan Bowling, County Planning Director. The proposed changes to the land development regulations are necessary to bring the regulations in line with a change to agricultural PD policy. that was made, a comp plan change that was made last March. So the comp plan policy is in effect, and it does take precedence over the LDRs, so the LDRs do need to be brought up in line with it. And there are a few more details in the LDRs to help implement the changes that have already been made in the comp plan. And I'll just list those out. First is for agricultural PDs, plan developments in agriculturally designated areas, to require a minimum lot size of 1 acre. The previous comp plan policy was for a 1 acre minimum, and that would be changed to a 1 acre, it was a 1 acre maximum, and now change it to a 1 acre minimum. Another aspect is to require open space to be provided in contiguous areas rather than clustering of lots necessarily. And also to require open space easements or similar instruments that will protect future development and would keep basically redevelopment of those open space areas at some point in the future. And the county would be given the right to enforce that prohibition of density increase. Also, another kind of a new part of the policy, and is now in this regulation change amendment, is to require applicants to identify best management practices, BMPs, for the particular project, and that would affect different aspects of the project construction, maintenance, and operations, and to require the applicants to identify the processes for certifying the best management practices. And there may be different types of best management practices depending upon the project that would apply to it. And that would all be done through the PD process. And eventually, actually, you all would see those proposals as part of the PD on a project-by-project basis. Also, there is a regulation to be added to prohibit nuisance recreational uses such as vehicle or watercraft racing within agricultural PD, since it is primarily ultimately a residential type of project. And the last thing that I just wanted to add is that the Professional Services Advisory Committee has reviewed these changes and voted unanimously 8-0, recommending that you all adopt these changes. The Planning and Zoning Commission also recommends unanimously that the board adopt these changes, and staff's recommendation is that you all adopt these changes. Be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners?
Yeah, Stan, is there a further definition of nuisance recreational activities? I know it says no racing, but what if somebody wanted to open up, just say, a ATV a trail riding park with no racing? Would that fall under nuisance, or what's our tighter definition, I guess?
Right. What I think this allows, again, all these are planned development type of projects, so they will be coming in, and the P&Z will make a recommendation. The board will actually set the standards and what's allowed and not allowed on a project-by-project basis. So I think this regulation and the policy that's in the comp plan allow the board to look at nuisance aspects with respect to any recreational activity that's proposed. These are examples that are given, and you're right, there could be some other situation. It gives the county the ability to regulate that, and kind of puts the applicant on notice that we're looking at the nuisance aspect or potential nuisance aspect of a recretional use.
Okay, but the board would still have the authority to say, no, we're not going to allow that?
Yes, it's a planned development process, so there's a lot of discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
I have one, please.
Mr. Bowden?
Whose BMPs are we talking about?
Right. Good question, and it is still a little bit open-ended there. We think that all projects will at least have best management practices for stormwater management, and there are already practices in place that St. John's and the state have criteria that are identified that could be used. But there may also be other kinds of uses in an ag PD that would have a whole another industry would have best management practices guidelines, and that's what we would be looking at. So there may be more than one type of best management practice, more than one agency or industry that has set a standard that would be followed.
Right, because agricultural has best management
Yes, certainly.
practices. The other question I have is the requirement of open space. Is there a percentage, or how is that? Who decides?
Yes, there are minimum percentages required in the zoning district and in the plan development regulations already. So this doesn't affect those. 60% in some areas, 80% in other areas, depending on how far west they are. And what this does is requires that there be some areas kind of grouped together. There will be common open space areas, but it also gives flexibility. The term areas, plural, is used purposefully there because there may be an ag PD that has several common open space areas. The percentages are already, minimums are already in the code, and of course, being a PD, the board could require more than the minimum.
Well, I'm really always concerned about property rights And I noticed this morning that the St. Lucie County is being sued for their maximum or minimum, whichever you want to look at their open space. So don't want to put us in that situation, but want to protect and preserve.
Right, and just to let you know, on a planned development project, open space that's on individual lots can be counted. So you could have open space for the overall project. Part of it could be in a backyard or area of a large, 1 acre lot, and then some of it could be common open space. So both can count in an Ag PD.
Right, and I do want, for the record, to make sure that everybody understands that this is not new homes, new towns, new villages. That's a whole different conversation, different part, because sometimes that's confused.
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioners?
Stan, would that be why because of that concern, is that why we did any density transfer to TDRs?
That's correct. In other words, there will be no density bonuses with this. This is just an agricultural plan development. If somebody wanted to pursue that, there would have to be a different process like new towns that they would go through.
Okay.
This is pretty cut and dry.
Yes, it is.
Any other questions? If not, we'll open the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Does anyone like to be heard? Mr. Paladin?
Good morning. Joseph Paladin, Chairman of the Growth Awareness Committee. I've been working with this for over a year. I was part of this from the very beginning, and I'm proud to be a part of this. I support staff on this 100%, and I'd like to give some personal thanks to some of the people that helped make this happen. Commissioner O'Brien and Commissioner Wheeler, who went to the Regional Planning Board, and without them, I don't think we'd have got the positive votes that we got down there. And Mrs. Bowden, Commissioner Bowden, on helping us with the wording on the perpetuity issues to make sure this is never filled in, and the other commissioners for their full support. So I want to thank you all for your help, and I'm proud to be a part of this, and we support staff 100% on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Paladin. Is there anyone else like to be heard on this? Anyone else? Close the public hearing. What's your pleasure, Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we adopt staff's recommendation and adopt the proposed wording as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Paladin.
That was a lot of hard work.
Next is a public hearing also, and it's Kenneth Jackson's request for special exception use approval for a child care facility to be known as
Kalinas?
Kalinas Daycare.
Who? Kalinas.
Okay.
I was closer than you.
Kalinas Daycare Center, and that's found on pages 190 through 205. And Paul, you?
Yes. Kalinas Daycare Center special exception use request. This proposed use is for a child care facility in an RS6 zoning district, single-family zoning district. So special exception use is required, and these uses are regulated in regard to scale. There are general site plan criteria that have to be satisfied, as well as specific criteria, and it requires approval by the Board of County Commissioners. The subject site is a single-family lot. It has an existing single-family home on it, located a little bit north of 45th Street off of 45th Place in the Gifford area. And wanted to show you here the red rectangle is the site itself, and to show it in context with the larger community. 45th Street, Martin Luther King Boulevard is to the south, and you can see this site is close. It's basically about a half a block off of 45th Street, and there's several interconnected subdivisions and neighborhoods in this particular area. One of the issues that came up at the Planning and Zoning Commission was a legitimate concern about having a child care facility off of a local road, because this is a local road that this fronts on. And staff's position is that this is what is proposed is the existing single-family home, a maximum of 15 children. The size of the building won't change. It fits in with the neighborhood there. And this is the type of area that's a good fit for these smaller kind of neighborhood-sized daycare facilities. And actually in the Gifford community, there's quite a few that have been approved by the county over the years, these smaller scale. And just wanted to show you the context of this to see that there actually could be several families that could use this facility within an interconnected neighborhood area, and could actually walk to this or drop off kids there. This is a closer view of the existing home and the project site. The site plan is pretty simple. The existing home is kind of toward the middle of the lot, and there's a rear yard area for play that will be secured and buffered. There's also a very large oak tree out in the front yard of the home that will be preserved in place with a small circular driveway and parking areas for the staff. Again, it's a small single-family home and small scale type of daycare that's proposed. Again, there's landscape buffering, which will also use existing trees in other areas and new trees to be planted. There was notice with this before the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing and this hearing. Staff was contacted by some adjacent residents prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. All those contacts were positive for the development. We've had none for this particular public hearing. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 4-2, recommending that the Board of County Commissioners grant special exception use approval for the project, and that's staff's recommendation as well. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Commissioners? Hearing none? I'm sorry?
No, I do not.
We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this? Anyone here that would like to be heard? Not? We'll close the public hearing.
Mr.
Chairman, I had the opportunity the other day to drive through the neighborhood and saw the home and actually spoke with the neighbor that lived, I believe he said Caddy Corner, and he described it as the neighbors felt that this was a good thing for their community, that he believed they had a nice, quiet neighborhood and they could see this as a positive for the families that live there and things like that. They do have the recreation area in the back there already in place, so based on my comments with the gentleman there and driving by the house, I don't see any reason why not to move forward with this.
The motion.
I'll make that as a motion.
Second. Any other comments under discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Next is Tax Equity Fiscal Responsibility Acts. Public hearing, Escambia County Housing Finance Authority for single-family mortgage revenue bonds, and that's found on pages 206 through 225.
Yes, Commissioners, in front of you today we have a public hearing to participate in the Escambia County Housing Finance Authority's single-family mortgage revenue bond program. We've done this for several years. What it basically does is utilize the industrial revenue bond allocation for this area, which opens up in January of every year. What they will do is they will issue mortgage bonds, which can be used by individuals, and they will have a tax-exempt rate utilizing the county's tax-exempt powers. This program is for first-time home buyers, and by definition, that is home buyers who have not owned a home for 3 years. The program is used for mortgages on single-family, attached and detached homes, condos, PUDs, and manufactured homes. They must meet Ginnie Mae, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac requirements. What this does is give people who of moderate income the ability to get in a home at a lower interest rate. That's the purpose of this program. And there's different target levels based on the number of members in the family. And that's what we have in front of you today.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? This is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to be heard on this? Is there anyone that wishes to be heard on this? Seeing none, close the public hearing.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Next, under public discussion is a request to speak from Jeff Purcell regarding the reopening of Vista Meadows Golf Course, found on page 26. Mr. Purcell?
And here?
Yes, sir.
Well, just so you know, I was the youngest Class A PGA golf professional in the United States. 1969, I was 23 years old at Elgin Country Club. Then I moved down here 21 years ago. I put a group together, and I designed, built, and operated a golf course up in Grant called Summit View. which was a nice little executive course. And about 2.5 years ago, Charlie Pishock sold it, and it ain't a golf course anymore. It's nothing. So anyway, Chuck called me about a month ago, and now I'm in charge of just the driving range and the clubhouse and the cart barn. And if you guys want to see, he's starting to mow again. They mowed 6 and 7 yesterday and 1 yesterday. And they're going to mow 8 and 9, you know, on the south golf course. But they mowed the driving range at least 3 or 4 times. But just for the fun, I put range balls out there for a week, and only one guy hit range balls. But anyway, they got a big meeting tomorrow. 2 guys are coming from somewhere out of Florida to look at the golf course and the greens and how to get it remodeled. I think they're going to do 18 holes. You know, not all 3 of the 9s. But that's better than nothing. And he's got 2 guys that are, well, a guy and a lady, they're contemplating leasing it. You know, maybe 9 holes and 9 holes or something like that. But anyway, and then I got all the stuff that was in the newspaper. You know, and one was in there today. And some of the people don't know that Mrs. Meadows bought it for $1.8 million from a bank, and then she got $1 million from Chuck, and that's why Chuck's dad bought it. You know, after she went bankrupt, that's why he bought it, hopefully to save him $1 million. So that's why they want to sell it for about $3 million, or a little more than $3 million. So anyway, it was a nice golf course. You know, when Vista had it, and then when they sold it, it didn't get quite as good, because believe it or not, when that guy bought it, they had 1,480 members when he bought it, and then next year they had 226 members because he ran them out. So anyway, well, here Pete. Here I'll give you my money card.
Jeff, just to clarify, is the driving range open or not?
It's open right now, if it's legal. That's part of the reason I came today, because Chuck told me that the driving range wasn't supposed to be open unless the golf course was open.
Right. And Bob, is that correct? Could you clarify for us, please?
Here, I'll give you a present, Chuck.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning. I'm Bob Keating. I'm County Community Development Director. The way our zoning is structured, we have permitted uses in certain districts and we have accessory uses. Golf courses are permitted uses in residential districts, so it's okay for a golf course to operate in the Vista area, and it was approved accordingly. A driving range can be either an accessory use or a permitted use. If you have a golf course, it's customary and incidental to a golf course to have a driving range. So if a golf course is open, a driving range can be open. We also have driving ranges as standalone permitted uses in some of our commercial districts. But they're not allowed as standalone commercial uses in the residential areas. So the bottom line is, and we have sent correspondence and given notice to the effect that no, they cannot have the driving range open down in Vista unless they have the golf course open. Now, I do want to say that doesn't mean they have to have all 27 holes open or even 18 holes open. They could have a 9-hole course, an 18-hole course, or a 27-hole course. But they can't operate the driving range independently of the golf course. It's an accessory use, so it has to be subordinate to and associated with the golf course being open.
Is there any way, I mean, this seems to be on the right track to try and fix what's happening down there and complaints we've had from the Vista residents. Do we have any latitude under our ordinances to work with them with a time frame to get 9 holes up, as he said, there's a couple of people coming in to look at that. I'd hate to see it. I'd hate to see it where we say, no, you can't operate this, and and then have them just withdraw and not continue with cleaning the place up and getting the golf courses operational. In other words, looking at this in phases. Maybe the first phase of getting everything going and back to normal would be the driving range and the clubhouse and so on and so forth. In other words, I'd like to encourage them and help them as much as possible to correct this problem.
And we want to work with them. We want to get it resolved. We don't like getting the phone calls, the letters either. And so we are going to work with them. But we can't allow a standalone restaurant to operate or a standalone driving range. But we're flexible in the opening of the course and the opening of the driving range. And we're certainly willing to work with any interested parties.
Okay. Great. Commissioners, any comments?
Just to reiterate what you said, Mr. Chairman, that I would like to see whatever we can do to help move this forward to get the golf course back up and running and get the residents of Vista happy with the course being maintained again. So anything we can do to encourage that or help move it along to a conclusion here, I think we want to try to do our best on that.
And you think the 9-hole course would be possibly ready for use if everything goes well? About when?
Well, the 9-hole golf course, on the south side, at the latest will be open by November 1st.
Which is pretty soon.
Reasonable.
20 days.
Is there a way we can, an exceptionality or something, phrase it, that we can begin operating, maybe not everything opening on that particular day, but give some flex time for the
Yes, we can work with them there.
And the other, so everything can get up and running.
Okay, good.
Okay.
At least I know why Commissioner O'Brien has his Go Green button on today. It's for Vista.
He's volunteered to mow?
Yeah, for Vista.
Whatever it takes, get this thing
First
done.
of all, thank you for bringing this forward, giving us an update on this. I appreciate it.
I'll tell you something else funny. I got my hair cut yesterday, and she cut it too short. And she told me I was one of the few guys who's 62 years old who still got dark hair. Isn't that weird?
I'm not even there yet.
Peter's only 32.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Sandra's still got dark hair.
Oh, for sure.
But she's not 62 either. So.
That's right.
I'm older.
Okay.
I was trying to help.
I sense this meeting deteriorating.
You're just getting in trouble.
Okay, next is public notice items. Notice of scheduled public hearings for October 23rd, 2007. County-initiated request to adopt a new public school facilities element and to amend the intergovernmental coordination element and the capital improvements element of the comprehensive plan as related to the public school facilities element, and that's legislative in nature. B is a county-initiated request to amend the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, and that's legislative in nature. County-initiated request to amend the comprehensive plan by revising future land use element policies 1.2 and 1.14, and by creating a new future land use element policies 1.14.1 and 1.14.2 for establishing the MHRP mobile home rental park up to 8 units per acre land use designation, and that's legislative in nature. And D is the county-initiated request to amend the future land use map of the comprehensive plan for approximately 779.86 acres from M1 density residential 1 up to 8 units per acre, and from L2 low density residential to up to 6 units per acre to MHRP, which is mobile home rental park, up to 8 units per acre, and that's legislative in nature. Under departmental matters, 11A1 has been removed. We've handled consideration of public hearing for the Old Dixie Highway. Go to general services, former elections office modular, and that's found on page 297. And go ahead, Mr. Tom, Mr. Baird.
Tom? There's been questions as how we will use or should we keep the modular building that's located across the street. And we've had unofficial inquiries, official inquiries, but we think at this time, after evaluating it, the sheriff showed some interest, but after looking into the costs, he doesn't have it in his budget. And we would have to add the cost of leasing that to our budget. We feel there would also need to be improvements, additional parking if we keep it there. When we did the application for this building, we showed the application to the city as if we were removing that modular and therefore wouldn't need additional parking. If we were to keep the modular there, we would need additional parking. So staff is recommending that we return the modular back to the company that we're leasing from, and that's our recommendation right now. Now, we have some private companies that have shown an interest. We are suggesting to them that they deal direct with the vendor that we lease from.
Move staff recommendation.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Request for the tour of the new facility found on page 298.
Tom Frame, General Services Director. As you can see by the transmittal memorandum that we gave you, we had received an inquiry from the Antique Automobile Club who wanted to come in, and now it'll be this coming Saturday, for a tour of the facility. I certainly would say that if we do any touring, that it be limited to public areas and not to any of the office areas. I probably wouldn't encourage private tours, to be frank with you, if we can avoid that. However, and I would like to bring back some recommended policies that we would apply for the use of the facilities here. But in the meantime, based on this request, I would like some direction as to what your feeling would be on this particular request.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't have a problem with it. It's a public facility. We've got a certain amount of access, that we have to keep, I guess you could say, secure. We've got a wonderful courtyard out there in the front that gives the opportunity for an area to have a facility with some shows like that. I think the public paid for it. If the public would like to use it with moderation and how you see fit, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, in the future, we'll come back with a policy and procedure, because it could burden the staff on the weekends and things. But in this case, I did not get back with the individual on a timely basis, and it's next week, and we didn't get through the whole agenda. So I recommend that we allow this. However, before we allow any more, that we come back with policies and also make sure that the board approves each one of the events.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I am concerned that staff will have to spend their Saturday over here, and for something when we're fixing to have an open house in October. So I have mixed feelings about this. I don't like to make exceptions, because we don't have a policy. We should have a policy before we start making exceptions, and I'm going to think twice about this, simply because I think it's a burden on our staff right now to do this. Our staff has worked tremendous to get us in this building, weekends and all.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Fletcher.
For Mr. Frame, it's my understanding that if you were to facilitate this request and get board approval, that you would be coordinating the tour?
Yes.
And would you be on payroll at that point, or is it strictly a voluntary situation?
I'm always on payroll, but it's a fixed amount. I'm salaried, so it won't cost any additional money to the taxpayers for me to be here on Saturday. And as indicated here, I would be the one that would do that. I don't mind doing that in this case.
Would the tour require anybody else to be here as well?
I don't believe it would. Like I said, I would not propose to walk them through the office areas, because 25 or 30 people might be a little bit difficult to control in terms of papers laying on desks, but there's a lot of what I call public areas, the meeting rooms, some conference rooms, and some areas that we can show them that I think would give them a feel for the facility and be worth their time.
Where would Joe's shower fall in that?
I think it's in a,
You got to pay $5 for that map.
I had to bring that one up. Oh, well, I think it'll be of interest based on what the paper's done. So I don't mind if Tom shows them through that area.
Absolutely.
You can go ahead and show them through that area, Tom.
In fact, there should be signs to the shower.
Tom,
Chairman.
did you offer the group the opportunity to come to the scheduled event, or did they have this event already?
Well, they had made
planned
an inquiry, and they're still waiting to hear from us. I had some communication as late as Monday with Art Newberger. They're going to contact me today to get a determination as to the action of the board. So,
well, I feel too the group that's asking to do this is the antique car group that past Commissioner Newberger is a member of, and of course Art's not unfamiliar with our facilities, obviously, maybe the building, but the other thing is that group does a lot in the community with displaying their cars to draw crowds in and help charitable organizations and everything else. Plus the other thing, I think that probably this problem shortly will go away simply because the building's new, there's more interest. I think as the building ages over the next year or so and people come and go, I don't know that we'll have any more requests. I know that we did this with the new courthouse years ago with, I think, the garden group or, flowers or whatever, that they used that. And we did it with the new jail when it was built for spouse abuse and I think Rotary clubs that work together to raise funds with the new jail with the lockup and stuff, or maybe Cancer Society did it too. But I think these problems tend to go away when the building's been in the community for a year or so. So I think it's a positive, it's a plus, and
you'll be over here this weekend to help.
I can certainly do that.
I'll be on call at the Crown Jewel.
I'll be on call as well.
This
This is the people's building, and they need to.
My impression is that staff probably likes it better when we're not here to help them.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I'd recommend is maybe, Tom, you guys can just set maybe a couple, 3 dates when groups can sign up on a first come, first serve, so it's more at our schedule instead of responding to everybody. And if we just have those dates set and see this was the day we'll have a tour, first come, first serve, and that way we can kind of control it.
I think we're going to come back with a whole
that's
set of
just my
defined
recommendation.
plans in order to have touring of the building.
We're going to have to be very careful due to fundraising things, and we're going to come back with a policy because there is considerable cost when you start getting large groups. This is my fault. Mr. Art Newberger contacted me, and we were opening, and I didn't get back with him on a timely basis. And so I feel we're obligated to do this, and it's a good thing. But we're going to come back with a policy on tours because we're going to start getting asked to use it for fundraising. I don't know if we want to get in that business, and that's something the commission has to decide.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Yes.
I move to allow the Antique Automobile Club.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
thank you.
Commissioners, can I also discuss another thing? We had talked about the grand opening being in a couple of weeks, and unfortunately, Mrs. Ginn is unable to and wanted to be at the grand opening, and she was the head of the Space Needs Committee that kicked off the building. So we may be looking to move that date if it's okay with everyone here. We'll be bringing it back to the commission next week.
Well, and the date that I've talked to all your aides was November the 2nd, and the 16th, which would be a week later, several of you are going away on a conference. And I do know that the calendars are generally open, but we'll put that back on the agenda. But November the 2nd was the date that
works
really
for me.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you would like, can we if you could make a motion on November 2nd for right now?
Move to approve November 2nd for right now.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Recreation lightning prediction system, memorandum dated September 14th, found on pages 299 through 309.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Cliff Crawford, our Recreation Director. At your September 11th, 2007 meeting, you had asked them for some additional information on the ThorGuard lightning prediction systems. We have been able to schedule that, and with us today is Mr. Pat Bennett, the National Sales Director for ThorGuard. This is a request for consideration of installation in both our Gifford and North County Aquatic Center, and Mr. Bennett is here to give you a brief presentation and answer any technical questions you may have.
Okay.
Mr. Bennett? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Just if I could, real quick, Cliff, before you sit down, do we have these soccer fields also by chance? We do?
Indian River County.
Yes,
the
sir.
fairgrounds?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Davis.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Pat Bennett. I'm from ThorGuard. Our world headquarters is in Sunrise, Florida, right outside Fort Lauderdale. We've been around since 1973, and we're in every golf tour in the world right now, the PGA, LPGA, South African, European Tour. We've done the Olympics. We're at 4,500 golf courses. We do all the major airlines. We're the only lightning prediction company in the world. All our competition out there is detection. And courses around this area that we're at right now, we're at the Windsor Club, Hawks Nest, Orchid Island, the Moorings Club, St. Edward's Lower and Upper School, Bent Pine. We did all 17 high schools in Brevard County north of us. We've done all the high schools in Port St. Lucie and Fort Pierce, and also Martin County. So coming from South Florida, I think I brought on 25 new cities in the last 2 years. We are the sole source vendor. The difference between detection and prediction is prediction, we deal with the electrostatic field, the difference between the positive and negative ions in the atmosphere, and we can tell you the probability of lightning strike based on science. Detection, on the other hand, deals with the magnetic field, and that's when a bolt of lightning goes through the atmosphere, disrupts the magnetic field, and it hits Earth. And you have to have a bolt of lightning hit Earth for it to be detected. So the downfall with detection is you can never be the first strike. You could have a thunderhead build up above your soccer association or your soccer field, and the first bolt would hit the ground, and 4 minutes later your detector will go off. We would have caught that bolt or that build up many hours before. It takes hours for a thunderhead to build. You might see the cloud expand in 10 or 15 minutes, but it took 2 hours for that to get enough energy to build a cloud up. We're sensing that positive buildup of ions there. Detection will not protect you from when the storm goes by. It will not protect you from a backstrike. And ThorGuard would feel that positive energy there. We're based on that positive energy buildup. If there's no positive buildup in that area, a bolt of lightning can't come to ground.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What would be the chances of this being so far ahead of actual anything happening that it would be almost like crying wolf whenever a cloud comes up? At what point does it break, and then I assume the alarm sounds?
Right. The way it works is we have a DI rating, a dynamic index rating, and you'll see it building from 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. So you're gonna have a good idea that you're gonna blow up that afternoon. When it gets to 3.0, it's going to give you the red alert, and the red alert is one 15-second blast, and then strobes come on. The strobes will flash the entire time that it's unsafe to be outside, and then when the storm dissipates and does not have enough energy to produce a strike, you'll get 3 5-second blasts, then it's all clear. It's all dealing with that positive ion buildup there.
How long have you been at St. Ed's?
Probably ever since I've been with the company for 3 years. I know we were there before then. We actually, the lower school, the smaller school, I did about 2 years ago, but the high school, it's been there probably 5 or 6.
Well, I'm just wondering with the lightning strike they had there, was there?
We came after that.
Came after that. Okay.
We came after that. Once they had the mishap there, the soccer coach getting.
Okay.
We came in after that.
What's your success rate? I mean, have you had lightning strikes and people injured where you've got your...
No, we've been around since '73. We've never had a mishap at a ThorGuard facility.
When you reach the 3.0 red alert, what does that mean in as far as distance or time?
Basically, if our horns go off, there's a 97% chance of a lightning strike within 2 miles. Proven, scientific. It will happen. There's a 3% chance. It's not. It's extremely accurate.
Within 2 miles, I'm assuming that means also in a certain amount of time also until that...
Yeah, we give 8 to 20 minutes advance notice. We are prediction.
Okay.
We'll give you 8 to 20 minutes notice.
And is this automatically done so we don't have to have somebody there trying to make a guess whether to hit the alert button?
The system is completely automated. You don't have to press any buttons. You can go to the unit itself and get a reading of it, or your coaches can go, or you can go see if the storm is dissipating or building. But it's a completely automated system, and you can say each facility can run individually. You can say, hey, I want the system to come on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd like it to turn off at 7 o'clock at night, or whatever your hours are at that park. We can do 7 days, different times or make them all the same time.
When this is approved, when will it be operational?
We could do it probably within 2 to 3 weeks. It takes a week to build the parts, and we can install it within 1 to 2 weeks after that.
Mr. Chairman?
One last question, please. After the danger is passed, do you have a signal, or it just stops?
No, that's when you get the 3 5-second blast. You get a 15-second blast for the red alert, and then the strobes are on. Then the strobes would turn off, and then you get 3 5-second blasts for the all clear.
Is it a different tone?
Yes. Well, yes. It's a 3 5-second blast. It's the same sound, but the 15-second blast lasts forever. It's a loud sound, and then you're going to get 3 5-second blasts, and then it turns off.
You get different periods, but the same sound.
Distinct sound.
Different discerning.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman? I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any further discussion? Mr.
Just,
O'Brien?
yeah, just to further clarify, the status for the 3.0 red alert, that's national standards, or it's something that is based upon good science? And
every one of that's our factory setting, and every single account is like that. We might have, like airports are set less of that for the people handling the bags on the tarmac, but they're all on radios, and they have less time, but they have a 4-minute drill that they do, and they can't afford not to be out there handling the bags. So airports are different, but all parks, all schools are all on that time.
okay, so when this 3 red alert goes off, we've got a pool full of kids and parents. That's sufficient time to get everybody out of the pool and into shelter? And
Yes, it's anywhere between 8 to 20 minutes. I don't know what the average is because thunderstorms have different velocities that they travel, but 8 minutes is as accurate as, that's getting us to a 98%.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Do you find that a lot of your strikes happen before the rain?
Most of your strikes are after the storm.
After the storm?
After the storm. The storm goes over you, and now it can be 10 or 20 miles away. And I was a golf pro before this, and I just thought since the wind was blowing that way, I was completely safe. Totally untrue. Lightning's the size of a pencil, and it's 7 times hotter than the sun. It's nothing for the storm to go by 10 or 20 miles away, and when it went over this area, it pulled the positive ions from the ground up. Typically, it's sitting on a high building or an oak tree or a telephone pole or something, and the storm has energy for one last discharge. It almost always back strikes to the area it just went over. I can tell you that we've had 6 deaths in Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach this summer. 5 out of 6 have all been back strikes. They're what we call bolt out of blue. And bolt out of blue has been recorded to have traveled 60 miles from a storm. It's killed somebody 54 miles away, but most of your bolts out of blue are 10 to 20 miles away. So it's going to protect you. It's going to give you that positive energy buildup, and it won't give you the all clear. That's probably the greatest asset that Thorgard has. And you might have blue sky above you, the storm's past you, and your people are beating on you because they want to get back out there, but it's still unsafe, and that's the most common time for a lightning strike.
Thank you.
Mr. Tripson?
Jens Tripson, Vero Beach. I'd like to say I think doing this is a great idea, but I'm kind of curious with if we have these systems implemented and for some reason it doesn't predict a strike and somebody's hit at one of our public facilities, who's liable?
I think you've got an act of God in that case, and we'll take our chances. It's better to have warning if you know of a hazard than to do nothing.
Okay, I was just curious.
Mr. Tripson? I'm certain that, and Cliff, if you want to assure the public on this as well, that your qualified, trained staff, the lifeguards, can also make that determination, and that they would be able to override any action that took place if they need to, in the spirit of public safety, to ensure that we're saving lives or ensuring that there's no incidents.
There is a manual button that you can always send the system off early.
I think they do a fine job as it stands now, but this is a great tool, and I'm excited that within 3 to 4 weeks we'll be fully protected.
Thank you.
If it passes.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Anything else, Commissioners? We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Just, Mr. Bennett, you said you were a former golf professional? Were you here earlier when we have a golf course available, you know? You might want to put an offer in while you're here.
And I don't have brown hair either. Thank you.
Thank you.
I accepted this job because I wanted weekends off.
Okay.
Under Utility Services, First Road from 35th Avenue to 32nd Avenue and Bureau Home Sites Unit Number 1, UCP, Number 2984, Water System Conflict Resolution, Work Authorization, Directive Number 2007-010, found on pages 310 through 313.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and approval. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Continuing Consulting Services, Work Order Number 10 with Masteller, Moeller & Reed, Inc., for engineering services for water and sewer utility extensions for County Road 512, Phase 4, UCP number 940, found on 314 through 321.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Approval of bid award and sample agreement for Indian River County bid number 20070774, Wabasso Causeway, County Road 512, water main and replacement utilities department.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Next, Emergency Services District, approval of minutes meeting September 4th, 2007.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And next is additional staffing for Fire Rescue Stations 6 and 11, memorandum dated September 26, found on pages 338.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is John King. I'm the County Emergency Services Director. At the September 5th budget hearing, the Board directed staff to review budgetary options to increase the current staffing levels at Fire Rescue Stations 6, which is on South A1A, and Station 11, which is at the east end of the Wabasso Bridge. Currently, 2 personnel are assigned to the engine and 2 personnel are assigned to an ambulance at those locations. And at the other stations, there are 3 personnel assigned to the engines. So to make any adjustments to make a uniform staffing level, the Emergency Services District would need 7 additional personnel assigned to the Operations Division. The approximate cost is approximately $475,000 to do that. Now, again, at the budget hearing, there was some discussion that occurred about the evolution of how we got to these staffing levels. That's found in the backup. There are some small spreadsheets in there, but I think it's important to remember for this discussion that the legislature imposed a 3% budget cut on us this year, and that has already occurred. The second thing is the 2007 to 2008 millage is set and has been published. So any adjustments that we make now are adjustments we're making to the budget that's already been discussed and approved. And so again, staff was directed to come back with some options. We were actually requested not to make a recommendation. That's why you don't see a recommendation here. But the 4 most probable options to discuss here today is option 1. Option 1 is to make the change immediately. And if you do that, to find the money to pay for the additional staffing, I have to make line item adjustments. Within the approved budget, we have 2 replacement fire engines and 2 replacement ambulances. If you look at option 1 in your backup, the way that we fund those positions for the entire year is to delete 1 fire prevention staff. We would delete 1 fire engine. We would delete 1 ambulance. We would lease purchase 1 engine and lease purchase an ambulance. That would give you the money working within the approved budget to pay for the additional staff required to change staffing. Option 2, as found in the backup, identifies that we would delete 1 personnel from fire prevention and we would delete 1 ambulance. What that does is it provides enough funding to pay for half the year, but the board has to remember that come October of next year, those costs will be annualized, but you're not carrying any debt service into the new year. Option 3 is to delay increasing the staffing at stations 6 and 11 to a future budget. And option 4 is to delay any decision in this regard until after the super exemption that's been discussed statewide for January of 08 has been finalized at the state level. So those are the 4 options. Are there questions that you have for me about the 4 options?
Commissioners? Any comments? Looking at this and going through, I like option 2. It kind of splits between personnel and capital. We need to spend the capital for the equipment, and it phases it in basically. We would probably be hiring them in, probably about April.
Be April, first full pay period in April.
But that would be my choice as option 2. I think out of the 4 options, that does the best job overall and the best compromise.
We do have season coming. I would like to have them on board for season. I mean, that's when everything ramps up.
Well, we've been going along this way, and I agree. I'd like the stations fully manned, but we're trying to, we're working on a tight budget. We do need the equipment. That's very important also, and I'd hate to set equipment aside for another year. And I think it's a compromise. I think we haven't got everything we want, but we're not losing everything either.
The first option, we do still buy the equipment. We just lease it rather than buy it up front. We finance it. That was the first option. If you wanted to do it October, we didn't want to get ourselves in a position we had about 10 years ago. We were deferring capital like fire trucks to balance the budget. So what we did is we looked at financing. Now that'll hurt you in future years. What that does, it's a trade-off. But the commission gave us the marching orders to come back and to make it as painless as possible. And I'm trying to accomplish this. And that's what we've done today. So all the options we've attempted to make it what we feel is evaluating the best we can and give you several alternatives.
And the only difference is we'd lease the equipment, but we'd go ahead and staff up, ramp up.
Yes, that's just for clarification.
How long would the lease last?
5 years.
Yeah,
5 years on the fire truck. We'd probably try and do the ambulance in 3 because they don't last as long.
Well, now,
let me clarify this. I think, if I understood correctly, Jason, correct me, but if we do option 1, we are eliminating 1 engine and 1 ambulance and lease purchasing 1 engine and 1 ambulance.
Yeah, I apologize. That's correct. Commissioner Wheeler was right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. We talked about 9 options. I tell you, Joe and Jason and I spent some time working on this, and this was the best 4 of the 9 options we discussed. So I apologize for correcting, but I want to make sure we're clear.
No, I was wrong. Commissioner Wheeler was right. I apologize.
So just so I understand it, in 5 years, we'll actually own the machinery with the lease purchase?
That's correct. But I have that debt service that carries every year as I make payments on that.
Right.
Well, I still think option 2 is the best compromise. I mean, we're giving a little, taking a little, and we're getting on the right track, and we're moving forward with personnel and manning these departments. And I've always been a firm believer that, and I realize going all the way back to the consultant and what was said, I think that all people need to have protection, public safety available to them. And if the calls aren't there, I oversimplified maybe, but I look at like utilities. If you live in an area and you're paying for your water bill, it's up to you whether you turn the faucet on or not. When you turn that faucet on, the service ought to be there. And the people on the beach are paying for the service to have the ambulances, the fire trucks there. And if the calls are less, that's one thing. And plus, we use them on the west side of the river also. But if the call comes in, they need to have that available. And usually, and my understanding is from talking to some of the paramedics and firemen, that usually when there's a call for an ambulance on the beach, it's a pretty serious call. Where on this side of the river, maybe a fender bender or something of that nature. But usually on the beach, it ends up being something of a life-threatening nature. But anyway, that's where I'm at, and it's up to you
So the
folks.
compromise is wait it out this season and own the equipment?
No, the compromise is to start in the middle of the fiscal year and to lease the equipment.
Well, he's talking about, are you talking about that? Or-
Yes, option 2, which would still get our equipment, would move forward with buying the equipment, and we start in April, we would hire the additional people needed.
Well, that's the end of season.
Well, I know that, but, we've been there, and I don't know, we've got 6 months here, and this is just a compromise. We actually got 5 months left.
No, option 2 has a $245,385 impact.
No, this is,
That is correct in as much as you're only paying for half the year for the additional employees. And that's how you're using the other 200 and some thousand to pay down the equipment, the capital equipment.
And that's if it deflects, if the ramp-up begins or is initiated in April of 2008. I think our primary concern is what the outcome could be on the January 29th vote. And during the budget hearings, we did have a strong concern that not all of the citizens had the same level of possible protection. So I'd like to see a hybrid of this, whereas we would have the protection that we are seeking for our citizens, but not necessarily wait until April. I think the concern is what can happen to the budget on January 29th, which we don't know is going to take place or not.
Well, this year's budget would be, we're already set in this year's budget, and that's why I'm looking at this compromise. So, we've got so much money there in this budget, the millage rate has been set, and I'm looking at trying to phase this in. We're farther ahead, regardless of what we do, than we were before we talked about manning the other two stations. So, and we've got so much money there to work with, and I'm looking at splitting part of it between capital and part of it between personnel by phasing it in April, which is the last 6 months of the budget.
can you clarify on what page you're looking at?
340.
340.
40. Top is 245, 385, and the second one is 246, 260. And the initial impact on option 1 is 503,714. Is that correct, Mr. Brown?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, I can't make a motion, but
Just, John, one question. The fire inspector position, I guess we're going to transfer that to the fire medic?
It would be my recommendation that we would find a place for that person who comes from fire prevention. To hold a position in fire prevention, the person has to meet all the qualifications as the responders. In fact, I use my fire prevention folks as a support team.
That was my concern, that this person, when we move them, would be fully ready to go as a fire medic.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, that's good. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt option 2, which would be to implement the additional staffing to stations 6 and 11 as of the first pay period in April of 2008.
okay, we have a motion. I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
And next, Solid Waste Disposal District approval of minutes meeting September 4, 2007.
Move approval.
Second.
In a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Cancel 2007 petition hearing, Solid Waste Disposal.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. And this is another record. We're adjourned.
You can go make your lunch.
Thank you, lady.